to tell you guys, just kind of a heads up, a little warning. I am coming in here this morning all just fired up. So I'm also a little under the weather. And so try to ignore that if, for those of you that like that grosses you out. I don't know how to fix that the way it sounds. But I am all fired up. A lot of you have asked that we have run into, hey, how was Haiti? And I mean, I don't really know how to describe it. The trip was mind-blowing. Like just a couple of, aspects of it. From a getting work done standpoint, we could not possibly have accomplished more. We were able to work from sun up till sundown, and it could not possibly have been more productive. From a relationship standpoint, it could not have gone better. Our team was amazingly unified, and we supported each other. But more than that, our ability to connect with the Haitians was just incredible. We had them working with us and kind of along with us the whole time. Amazing. Then, like from a meaning standpoint, what we were able to do and the way we were able to do it along with them was staggering. I'm not going to go into it too much this morning, but the work that we did was so meaningful. And so let me give you just a little gist of the trip, because the trip itself led into what I'm going to talk about this morning, and I'll make the connection. But here's the gist of our trip. 50 years ago, American missionaries from Florida came to that part of Haiti and built a training center along with many other things that they were doing. And so for 20 years, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Haitians, both pastors, church leaders, community leaders, that were trained in this center that was built and paid for by these American missionaries from Florida. But eventually, those missionaries grew old, and they passed away, and no one else came after them. And for a few years, the Haitians continued the work there. They continued to train. They had enough leaders that had been trained to continue training other leaders, and they used that center. But eventually, the center kind of got run down, and as you can expect, life in Haiti is hard, and things are so tragic, and so it just kind of got run down. And so this training center has been sitting there largely desolate for 30 years. So it has been unused really since the mid-'80s. Okay, but the two men who kind of operate Ebenezer Ministries, which is our partner in Haiti, Pastor Michelle and Pastor Joshua, they were both trained there. So this is where they got their training. And they have a passion for this place. They've both been serving as pastors, not only as pastors, but serving together as pastors for 3 decades. I mean, there's this amazing assembly of Haitians that have come together to do this incredible work that's going on down there. And they've built this powerful organization, powerful in a good sense of the word. And they've done this thing together. Now, in Haiti, things don't usually last more than about 6 months. They've been doing this for 30 years together in partnership. But for Joshua, and we've got an image of him, here he is with his wife, who's just an absolute sweetheart, and then his 3 boys are also in the picture here. The reality for him that this training center was lying dormant was just, it gave him an ache in his spirit. He was trained there. He saw so many people trained there, and he's the one that carried on the work. So when the American missionaries passed away and were gone, he's the one that kept trying to gather people and use this facility. But it got run down. And so over those 30 years, he tried multiple times to fix it up and kind of get it going, but he didn't have the time, he didn't have the manpower, he didn't have the budget, and so that was our project. They looked at this facility and said, we want to get this activated again and get community leaders coming in here getting trained. We want pastors getting trained. We want teachers getting trained. We want training happening here. So when we were dialoguing with them and Jen was saying, what can we do for you? What's the next step? They said, let's get this thing going. Now, the well that we first drilled, the very first one we drilled, is right there on the property. Okay, so people have to come there to get water. There's water activated, and this was all part of the vision, and I don't know that I understood this at first. But this is all part of the vision of getting this thing going again, was to get that water. And that water is, that well is, it's flowing. It's unbelievable. So that's what we did. We were down there doing construction. You wouldn't believe the work that I did. I mean, I was amazing. So, what we were able to do in 1 week, because we have power tools, we got a generator and we ran those tools, and we tried to let the Haitians help us with the power tools, and we realized that's a bad idea. They're not good with drills, they're not good with saws, they're going to kill themselves. So we said, just partner with us, do what you do, work on the concrete, they're really good at that. And then help us, measure stuff out and lay it out, and you can hold it and we'll cut it. And man, I won't go into it, but the amount of work that we got done in 1 week is unreal. It would take them well over a year to do that, not to mention that they don't have the resources. And so here's one of the buildings that we worked on, and we have before pictures. I won't do that right now because we're going to save that for Haiti Sunday, but we built doors, hung them. I mean, we just completely transformed that place. And it was such a beautiful thing to see them so excited about it. So I have so much I want to say about it. I'm not going to, Jen's like, save something for Haiti Sunday. Okay, all right. So on Tuesday, all this is leading into why I'm preaching about what I'm preaching about this morning. On Tuesday morning, we were getting ready to fly out. So we were going to have breakfast at 8 o'clock, and Joshua's wife, they lived with us while we were there, and she fed us breakfast and dinner every day, cooked that for us. And so we were going to have breakfast at 8 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock, we were going to leave to drive to the airport. And so I woke up at like 5:45, and I was just laying in bed in my lovely mosquito net, and the rooster was crowing, and cars were driving by, and I was sitting there, and so I was trying to go back to sleep, and I just found myself feeling like super awake. So I tried to fall back asleep until about 6 o'clock, and then I said, and I got this sense that God was saying to me, get up. Like, I have something for you. So I was like, all right. I mean, I might as well be up. I'm just going to be laying here awake anyway. So I got up and I went out into the complex, and there's you couldn't tell from that was one building. There are many buildings there, and the property is actually pretty large. And I just started walking around the property, and I just felt compelled to pray for their ministry, to pray for Pastor Joshua and his leadership, to pray for many of the other things that we had seen that they're doing and they're working on. And so I was just praying and praying and praying. And then all of a sudden, I'm praying for our church and praying that God would move in us in some of the similar ways that he's moving in them, because it's unbelievable. Started praying for my kids, I was just praying for everything. Walking around the facility, just like hands up, just praying for this place. And you go, well, you're a pastor, of course you do that. I do that. And I don't do that at 6 o'clock in the morning in Haiti, I don't. And so after about an hour of that, one of the Haitian guys that we've been working with all week came over and stood by me and started talking to me. And I've been studying Creole enough and have been to Haiti 12 times enough that I had enough Creole that he and I were able to have a pretty significant conversation, and it lasted about 45 minutes. And he was just telling me about his love for God, and he was telling me about how blessed they are to get this facility going and all that God is doing in them. And he talked about how this is God's church, not his church. He talked about how American missionaries and Canadian missionaries and French missionaries can be really annoying. He said oftentimes they come, but they don't respect God. Oftentimes they come, but they don't respect us. And then he just said, we feel so blessed to have you here. You respect God. Your love for God is real. We can see it, and you've loved us. And it was a really powerful thing for me. And so I'm just sitting there going, God, you did have something for me. But as I was praying just prior to that, I was, praying for their facility, praying for what was going on, and just this overwhelming sense of awe of what God is up to in them and in their community. And this passage came to mind to me, a passage that I'd heard someone speak on about 6 years ago, and it just hit me over the head. And to be honest with you, if you were here 2 weeks ago, I said, okay, we're wrapping up this series, How Big Is Your God? And I had a whole nother thing planned for this morning, and I was sitting there praying, and it was like this passage just dropped in on me, and I went, I have to speak on this. So that's what's happening this morning. That's what's led to what we're doing. And I just want to walk through this passage with you. This comes from 2 Kings chapter 3. And when you're down in Haiti at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're praying and 2 Kings chapter 3 comes into your mind, you go, maybe I should do something with that, So So here's the setting. Okay, here's what's going on in 2 Kings. Israel and Judah are divided. The nation is divided. Okay, the nation of Israel is divided between Judah and Israel, and they've joined forces with Edom. And they're marching off to war, as they often are in the Old Testament, to face the Moabites. Now, the king of Israel, okay, the northern kingdom, the guy was a weasel. I mean, just he had weak faith, he had weak character, he was selfish, he was petty. And so we're picking up the story here as these three armies are marching off in 2 Kings 3. And it says, so the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and they marched on that roundabout route 7 days. And there was no water for the army, nor for the animals that followed them. And the king of Israel said, alas, which I'm sure is, it's a great Hebrew translation. Alas, for the Lord has called these three kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. You get the picture of this guy. This is King Eeyore. He's just like, it'll never work. Right? Like, we're doomed. The Lord has called us all together to lead us to destruction. God doesn't love us. God doesn't care. God has abandoned us. Pooh, do something, So the king of Judah, he's listening to this rant, and he's like, wait a minute. And he has a totally different thought. It says, but Jehoshaphat said, is there no prophet of the Lord here that we may inquire of the Lord by him? So this guy, okay, Jehoshaphat, weird name, good king, king of Judah, king of the southern kingdom, he's a man of faith. He loves God. And he looks at the same circumstances, same situation, and he says, you know what? Maybe we need to go to God on this. Maybe we need a word from God. Let's find a prophet. So it says, one of the servants of the king of Israel answered and said, Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here, who poured water on the hands of Elijah. Okay, so the prophet Elisha is nearby, and he, it turns out, was the right-hand man of kind of like the understudy to the legendary prophet Elijah. And Jehoshaphat knows him. He's like, oh yeah, that guy. And so he's thrilled. So verse 12, and Jehoshaphat said, the word of the Lord is with him. Like, I know he's a godly man. I've seen this guy in action before. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Okay, now you got to get your mind around what's taking place here, because here they are. They are leading their armies to go to war, and there's no water. Okay, their men are in a valley, they're in the desert, and they must find water. Okay, the men are dehydrated. The animals, the horses, they're dehydrated. And their kings say to them, hey guys, hold on. We're going to go find a prophet. Just chill. And they take off. Just wait for us to get back. Everybody okay? And the guys are like, you're the king. I mean, okay. So they track down this prophet, Elisha. It says, then Elisha said to the king of Israel, what have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and the prophets of your mother. Okay? Like translation, you're a weasel. But the king of Israel said to him, no, for the Lord has called these three kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. And here we go, Eeyore again. And Elisha's just like, really? Come on. So Elisha and the king of Israel, they're not connecting well. Verse 14, and Elisha said, as the Lord of hosts lives before whom I stand, surely were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not look at you nor see you. A little disrespect. And then he says, and I love this, now, bring me a musician. And I just have this, maybe it wasn't this way, I'm sure that he was, but I just sort of, bring me a musician, right? He's just like, Okay? So he's like, I need to hear from the Lord. Okay? And just, by the way, some of you will say to me every once in a while, hey, no offense. I mean, no offense. And usually when someone says no offense, get ready to be offended. But people will say, hey, no offense, man, but I just want you to know when I come to church, like God speaks to me oftentimes more during the music. And I'm like, well, yeah. That's how it works, man. I mean, music is unbelievable. And now we don't want to have this incredible performance thing where we're, trying to do a Katy Perry thing and blow your doors off, But music has this unbelievable power to help us focus and to tap into the human heart. And God speaks to people when they get settled in the presence of music. It's why worship is something that, Christians have disagreed about stuff for 2,000 years. You wouldn't believe the stuff that Christians have disagreed about. But you know what happens in virtually every Christian community that's ever existed for the last 2,000 years? Music. We worship together. And it's amazing how God speaks to us when we put ourselves in the right frame of mind. Okay, so here's Elisha, and he's irritated. They're coming to him. He's like, really? You're going to come to me now, you weasel? Okay, but he's like, yeah, you need the Lord. So, and I'm not in a good spot. I'm just irritated. So bring me a musician. Okay, so he sits in the presence of the music, and it does what it's supposed to do. So it says, then it happened, when the musician played, that the hand of the Lord came upon him. And he said, thus says the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. We'll come back to that. For thus says the Lord, you shall not see wind, nor shall you see rain, yet that valley will be filled with water, so that you, your cattle, and your animals may drink. And he tacks on, and this is a simple matter in the sight of the Lord. He will also, by the way, deliver the Moabites into your hand. I think this is a simple matter in the sight of the Lord, is a little dig the king of Israel. Do you have any faith, man? Do you know the God you serve? Now, this proclamation is good news. It's really good news, but it's also kind of bad news. Because God says, I'm preparing to work on your behalf. Good news. Okay? I'm going to come to your aid. Good news. I'm going to rescue you. Good news. I'm going to give you victory. Good news. I'm going to send water. Awesome news. But first, and here comes the bad news, but first, y'all need to go into the valley and dig some ditches. Because when I send the water, it's just going to flow all throughout the valley and go down into nothing if you don't dig some ditches. Can you imagine delivering this message to the men when the kings get back to the soldiers who are dehydrated, with animals that are dehydrated? They're like, hey, God's going to deliver us. Get this, guys, God's going to deliver us. But first, you all need to go all throughout the valley and you need to dig ditches. In the desert. You ever dug a ditch? Man, our house right now, we're putting in this walkway so you can get up to our front door, and we had to dig and dig and dig. It took us like weeks of just digging. And, I've got Propel water every 30 seconds or so. I'm like, ooh, I'm thirsty. Got a little water, And then I stand back and watch Jen go, babe, you're swinging that axe well. Keep it going. Digging ditches is hard work. Not to mention it's 100 and something degrees and you're already really thirsty, right? God says to these guys, I want you to go down into the valley and I want you to dig ditches. Now, why would God do that? Well, we're not told. But I'll tell you what I think. God is saying, I'll move on your behalf if you trust me. And I'll know that you trust me if you're willing to do the unthinkable before I pour my blessing out on you. Show me that you trust me enough to go down into the valley and dig some ditches. And once you've dug those ditches, I will fill them with water. And he wants to remind them, look, you can't bring rain, you can't bring the water, but you can dig a ditch. And if you dig the ditch, I'll fill it for you. But you got to get moving. You got to do something here. It says, verse 20, now it happened in the morning, when the grain offering was offered, that suddenly water came by way of Edom, and the land was filled with water. They trusted God. They sought after him. They asked him to meet their need, and he did. And it's kind of like God loves doing this. Like he wants to have this relationship where people rely on him, and when they do, then he reveals himself and his power. Okay, so this is the passage that came to me as I'm walking around the complex in Haiti at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I feel like God has something for us in this. And so I just want to walk through 4 questions that I think are valuable to ask in light of what happened here. The first one is, what am I up against right now? Ask yourself, what am I up against right now? When we were in Haiti, we saw people that were really up against it. I mean, they were really up against it. They don't have jobs, they don't have education, we look at it, we go, I don't even know how you can live. It's one of the reasons why Americans go to Haiti, and every time they go, I'm so surprised by that I see. Why are we surprised by the joy? We're surprised by the joy because we look at their life circumstances, we look at all that they don't got, and we say, I could never be happy in your situation. We project ourselves onto them and go, I would be a wreck. And yet they come up to us, they're smiling, they're kind, they laugh, they joke, they hug, and we go, that's unbelievable. Because they are up against it. And yet, as we looked at Ebenezer, God is moving among them in these incredible ways. And I'll talk a little bit about it this morning. We'll save most of it for 2 weeks from now. But it's incredible. It's incredible. And so my question for you this morning is, what are you up against? Maybe it has to do with your marriage. You look at your marriage and something's off and you don't know how to fix it, and the intimacy that you want to have isn't there, the intimacy that you used to have isn't there, and you are up against it. Or maybe there's a family issue. Maybe there's some bickering. Maybe there's some tension. Maybe there's some stuff going on and people are not treating each other well in the family. And you look at it and you go, oh my goodness, and I don't know how to fix this. Man, am I up against it. Maybe it has to do with your career. Things have not gone the way that you thought they would go. The jobs have not come the way that you thought they would. The promotions haven't come the way that you thought they would. Maybe you got laid off and there's no new job in the works. And you look at it and you go, I don't know how to fix this. I'm up against it. Or maybe you're sitting here this morning and honestly, you're in church, but you're like, man, spiritually, I'm not doing well. Like, I've got doubts. I've got temptations in my life that are eating me alive. If people knew what I've been up to, and you go, I don't know that I have the strength to do this any better. I don't know that I can fix this. And spiritually, you look and you go, I'm up against it. Or maybe it's your health. Something in your body's not working the way that it should. And you realize, I can't just wish this better. Or maybe you're dealing with a lot of fear and anxiety these days. When you think of the future, it scares you to death. You think of all the things that could go wrong, or you think of all the things that are going wrong, and it feels overwhelming, and you're up against it. Or maybe it has to do with your own inadequacy. There are things that you feel like you could do and should do, but there's this fear that prevents you from getting engaged in them because you go, I don't think I'm enough. Or maybe there's guilt. Something has happened somewhere along the way in your life, and maybe it was a big event, or it's just something that keeps recurring. And you have this guilt, and maybe nobody knows. Maybe someone you know is making terrible decisions in their life, and it's killing you. Could be a sister, could be a child, could be a parent. And you go, man, I wish I could fix that. I wish I could change their mind. And then you watch and you go, man, I'm totally up against it here. What is it that you're up against these days? What's an area of need for you right now? And then that leads to a second question. Am I truly taking my need to God? In Haiti, every night we had what we called devotions. They didn't really look like what many people would envision when they pictured devotions. But we just sort of would process the day together. And every night, somebody different was in charge of leading that time, asking a question or giving a thought, and just saying, let's think through this a little bit together. And then we would pray for each other, or pray, and it, led to some beautiful times. It's amazing how different people would come at it with such different perspectives, and every night it was slightly different. But one of the nights, and I don't even remember who it was, somebody asked the question, what do you want to take home from here? Like, okay, when we get back, this has been an incredible experience. What's one thing that you really want to take away from this? And I thought about that, and I thought, man, I'll tell you what it is for me. I want to take home this sense that God is big. That God is really big. And that he is really working behind the scenes. He's really working. He cares about what's going on in the world, and he's big. And he's given me a role to play in certain things, but what I want to take home is just this understanding that my role is about like this. My role is so tiny, and what God is doing is so big. And when I looked at the Haitians that we were working with, I'm like, they get this. They know how helpless they are. They work and they work and they work, and God blesses them with something, and they go, look at what God did. It's beautiful. But we have to take our needs to God. And I don't think we do this. I don't think I do this. I think when I have needs, I sit back and I go, uh-oh, now I'm hosed. And I sound like this weasel king from Israel. It'll never work. God's abandoned me. What am I going to do now? If I had a true friend, they would say, let's go seek a prophet, man. Question number 3. What ditches do I need to dig? I mean, you look at your needs, and you look at the will of God to bless and to open things up to us that were not possible without his movement, his activity in our lives. Is there something that you should be doing to get moving instead of just sitting around going, it's never going to work? Can you do something? Because just imagine for a second that God wants to send water, that he wants to send water on you like a tsunami that will fill the land, whatever your land is, and crops will grow and stuff will flourish. The question is, are you digging ditches? Like, if that water comes, is it just going to roll on through? Or does it have a place to go? Because I'll tell you what Scripture teaches, I'll tell you what Jesus tells us is that God wants to pour his blessing out like water. God wants to send it to us. He wants to refresh us. He wants to renew us. He wants to bring life where there was no life. You think about a desert that's just a barren land, and the water comes in there, and pretty soon stuff is sprouting up, and it's green, and it's beautiful. And Jesus says, this is the picture of God in your life. This is what he wants to do. But I guess the question is, when it comes to your arena of needs, are you willing to dig some ditches? What are you willing to do to prepare the way for God to send his blessing to you? I mean, go back to your needs. If your need is a marital need, what are you doing to dig some ditches? Is there something you can do? If it's a family issue, something's going on in your family, you may not be able to solve the whole thing. You don't have the whole thing figured out, but can you start moving? Can you start digging a ditch? How about your career? Is there anything that you can do to solve this problem besides just sitting around? Spiritual struggles. I mean, this is so huge. I see people that have spiritual struggles. I talked to a guy several years ago, came to me, and this was like 8 years ago, and he's like, man, Pastor, I just have to tell you, I'm not doing well spiritually. Like, I just don't feel the presence of God. I don't get the sense that he's up to anything in my life. I've had seasons where that's been true, but it really hasn't been true for a long time. I was like, okay. That happens, man. There's hills and valleys in the Christian life. It's a long walk. It's not one single step. It's a long, long walk. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. That's normal. So I said, well, tell me a little bit about what you're doing about it these days. As I said, if you're going to our church, I haven't seen you much. Are you going somewhere else, or what's happening? He's like, no, I haven't really been going anywhere. Okay, well, what's your prayer life look like? Do you pray? No, I haven't really prayed. You're part of a small group or a life group, or, Anything? No. You read the Bible? No. You read any Christian books? No. Okay. I'm not a doctor. But I think I can help diagnose some of what the problem is here. You're not hearing from God because you're not putting yourself in any place where you would hear from God. It's not that complicated, man. You got to dig some ditches. You got to get out there and do some work. I mean, my goodness. And so I just want to say, if you're here this morning and you're struggling spiritually, that's normal. There are ups and downs in the Christian life, are there not? I mean, come on, Bob, you've been walking with Jesus for 120 years. Like, this is how it goes, man. There's ups and downs, but you got to dig some. If you're struggling, what are you doing? I mean, if God's going to send something to you, maybe you just give me a musician, like, let's go. Maybe it's your health. Maybe your health isn't doing, it's just not doing that well. And how many times do you go to the doctor and the doctor says, here's what you need to do. Let me tell you how to help this. Exercise. You know what else will help this? Eat better. Maybe you've got fear or anxiety. Is that something you can be praying about? I mean, are you praying about that? Is that something you maybe need to be talking to somebody about? I mean, can you dig a ditch? Can you dig any kind of a ditch in that arena? Inadequacy. I mean, again, is there anything that you can do to deal with that? How about guilt? I mean, my goodness. The Christian message is that Jesus died for us. He loves us that much, and no matter what we've done, no matter where we've been, we're forgiven, we're loved, and He wants to make us new. How much are you exposing yourself to the message of that? Are you listening to music that tells you that? Are you praying? Are you reading? Are you doing anything that will help you through that? Or are you just sitting there going, I feel guilty? I mean, can you dig a ditch? Maybe somebody you know is making terrible decisions. And this is such a difficult thing because we can't be, intrusive. We got to let people make their own decisions. We got to let them have. But maybe there's something you could be doing. And if you were to be asking God, He might give you some steps to take. Is there anything you can be doing to prepare the way for God's blessing? And this hit me as I was looking at the Haitians because I was like, oh my goodness. These people have been digging ditches for decades. They've been digging ditches, and some of the ditches end up being dry for a long time. But some of those ditches God is filling, and He's filling, and He's filling. And I'm watching this, I'm going, this is unbelievable. The progress since the last time I was here is unbelievable. Again, I don't want to spoil Haiti Sunday, but we went and visited a school that the Ebenezer Ministry started many years ago. And the last time we were there, last time I was there, I think, is when we took Casey with us on that trip 3 or 4 years ago. And Casey led a youth group at that. They have a nice basketball court in the middle of their school. It's really nice. And he was able to do like a youth group thing there. It was really great. And then a couple of trips ago, Cameron went down with Jen and they put on a basketball clinic and they taught people they taught them how to coach and how to play basketball. Really cool thing. But the last time I was there, they were showing me around and they were like, hey, this is the best school in town. And a lot of people want their kids to go here. And we're anticipating a massive amount of growth, like a much higher enrollment, but we're capped off because we're at the end of what our facilities can hold. So we're going to put another story across the top and across the top here, and we're going to build another building in the back, and it's going to be amazing. And then we're going to be able to, with the tuitions and stuff, we're going to be able to hire some extra teachers to do some extracurricular things, some PE, music, computer lab stuff. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? In Haiti? That's crazy. So we go back this time, and Josh was giving us the tour of just kind of some of the highlights of what they've got going. We go to this school, and sure enough, they have built another level on the top of this thing. And there's another building in the back. And I'm walking around. We're just walking around from classroom to classroom to classroom. Teachers are teaching. The students are engaged until we walk by. And then all the kids are like, hi, white people. And the teachers are like, oh. And we're like, hi. And they're like. But there was a Haitian lady out there in sweats with a whistle on the court. And these kids were having PE class. And all the kids have PE class, and they have music, and they do computer lab, and they have a library, and this is unheard of in Haiti. But I'll tell you what didn't happen. They didn't one day say, hey, let's start a school, and God went, here you go. They have 1,400 students, 1,400 students going to this school. They have a little playground area with swings and everything in it for the little kids. And the little, like preschool kids go in there and they're swinging back and forth, and somebody's organizing that, and they're singing and doing games with them as they have recess. They're rotating the kids. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But you know what happened is somebody started with a vision, and they said, we should start a school. And they said, well, let's start with like or just like a preschool class. So let's do that well. And they did the preschool class. And they said, all right, that's awesome. Now they're going to be, going to be first grade. Let's get them into first grade. We'll have first grade, and we'll still have a preschool class. Awesome. Now let's add a second grade and a third grade every year. And they did that, and they did that, and they did that, and they studied, and they tried to figure out what are better ways to teach kids, what are better ways to educate, and they wrote for grants, and they're digging ditches, they're digging ditches, they're digging ditches, and now, bam, here's this school, 1,400 kids in their community getting a top-notch education because of their love for Jesus that translated into them pouring themselves into educational plan for kids. It's beautiful. But all along the way, they're digging ditches, and I can guarantee you some of those ditches that they dug didn't do anything for them. You have to be willing to dig some ditches along the way that don't yield immediate results. You know what I'm saying? And they did that. This training center in La Croix, where we were, I mean, the Haitians came in there. We would be done at the end of the night, and they'd just work and work and work. They were landscaping, they're painting. Beautiful. You know what they're doing there? They're digging a ditch. And they want training. They want conference after conference after conference of leaders, community leaders, and pastors, and teachers, and mechanics, and all of that to be happening in that place. And it's going to happen. You guys, it's going to happen because they're digging ditches. The Savannah of Hope, place where we put our second well. It's an amazing story. We said, we can do water projects for you guys. We live in Seattle. It's the most philanthropic place on the face of the earth. And if you give us philanthropic projects to do, we can rally people around those in our church, and then the people in our church can rally people in the greater Seattle area. We want to do philanthropic stuff. We know that that's central to what you're doing spiritually, and we can come alongside you in that. Let's do that together. So we built the first well. And that's starting to lead to life at this training center in La Croix and the community around it. They've got a second well now that they've dug out, a place called Savannah of Hope. It's just this massive acreage, very flat area. And it turns out that this well is an artesian well, which means, I didn't know what this meant. I'm like, cool, an artesian well. What does that mean? It means that it flows, there's enough pressure in there that it flows on its own. You don't even need a pump to get the water out. You basically need to cap it off to keep the water from coming out all the time. So they've got this well. They're eventually going to bring in all the electricity because they're going to want to pump this thing at high volumes. But they've got this land, and they've got it all plotted off, and they're going to build an entire community around this well with homes. Just beautiful. And they're going to have a covenant with the people that live here. They say, okay, you can live here, but there's going to be no gang activity. There's not going to be prostitution here. Domestic abuse is not going to be tolerated. Okay, we're going to treat each other with respect. And if you don't want that, then you can live somewhere else. But if you want that, you can live here. There's going to be a well, and there's going to be a community garden and agriculture that's going to support everybody. It's unbelievable vision. And what are they doing there? They're digging ditches, right? We came to them and said, well, we think you guys, would water be good? And they were like, yeah, water would be good. We're like, well, we think we could rally people to do that. So this second well, they tried to dig it the first time, and it was deeper than what our money could afford to pay for. So they've got this French missionary down there named Claire. She's a French doctor. She's been down there for 30 years. And this whole water project thing got her thinking, and so she wrote in to get a grant from this, I don't know, some organization in France, and they got it. Now, I can't remember, Bob, maybe you can help me, or somebody that was on the team. I believe, if I remember right, the grant from France was for $400,000 for them to be able to invest in water projects and wells that transform communities. But you know what happened before God poured out $400,000 on them? They started digging ditches. They started moving. They started working. And literally, the water is going to be flowing into the desert, into canals for them. And it'll breathe life into their families. It'll breathe life into their economy. Unbelievable. So back to you. Where in your world can you start digging ditches? Trust that God wants to send the water. Where's that water going to go? You got to dig a ditch. Number 4. What if God is willing to pour water out on me? Sometimes I don't think we stop and think about this. You got a need in your life, you got something that's going on, and we don't stop and think, hey, what if God were to actually move in this area of my life? What would happen? What would that look like in your marriage, in your family? What would that look like in your career? What would it look like with your spiritual growth? And if you're in a spot spiritually where you go, I just don't think I have it in me to become a mature Christ follower, I just want to comfort you by telling you, no, you don't. That's the whole point. That we need Jesus. We need the power of God. What would it look like if God started moving in your life and he dealt with the fear or the anxiety that's crippling to you or the guilt? What if he started to give you a vision for how you can serve the person in your life that's kind of going off the rails and you go, man, I could do something there. And what if it turned that person's life around? What if that was a key deal? See, I look at the king of Israel in this whole scenario, and he's in the valley with the armies. He's like, it's thirsty. I'm thirsty, man. It's hot. And, the men are hot. The animals have nothing to drink. Clearly, the Lord brought us here to, hose us. And so often, I think in our lives, we look at our problems, and we get so focused on the size of the problem that we forget to see the size of our God. And I just want to say to you, man, he wants to work. It may be different than what you're expecting or wanting, but he wants to work. He wants to bless you. He wants water to be flowing through your life, through your family, through this church, through the community. Because he's good. He really is good.